EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander. Krause. That's John McMullen, the #1 Eagles beat reporter in town. Johnny Mac inching closer now, 3 days away from the NFC Championship game in Philadelphia. Eagles Commanders. How you doing on this Thursday morning, Johnny Mac?
Doing well, getting closer and closer. Maybe it's even going to warm up a little bit today. The Eagles are going to be able to practice outside, so we'll get our first look at Jalen Hurts and some other injuries popping up, which might even be a bigger concern if things are going in a negative direction for Dallas Goedert and Cam Jurgens, who did not participate in a walkthrough yesterday. So, it's estimated. It's not a real practice.
Right.
Might be just trying to manage them through the week. We'll get a better indication today. But obviously, one of the things that concerned me is that Eagles made a couple of practice squad moves, and one of them was veteran offensive lineman Cam Irving, who's got experience all over but can play center. And you start to think to yourself, why are they bringing a 32-year-old guy
Right.
on, what are we, January 23rd?
Right.
They don't have a lot of depth at center as they typically would. And my guess is if they need a center, it's going to be Landon Dickerson, actually. Brett Toth is now on the 53. He's technically the backup. You got Nick Gates, who typically isn't active. He can do it. But, you don't want to not have Cam Jurgens in this game.
Yeah, you have any real concern there, or did it seem to you more like a rest? I know they probably didn't tell you much, but just what's your gut feeling on that?
No, it's, because the guys who are resting, they designate with rest, even if they have multiple issues, like A.J. Brown, who's, listed as rest/knee. These guys weren't listed as rest. It's just ankle for Dallas Goedert, back for Cam Jurgens. And backs.
Yeah.
So something to keep an eye on. It's not the end of the world. It's early in the week. First day, they haven't even, as I said, practice in a pull. That'll happen today. And if he's back out there, probably no issues. But the addition of Cam Irving at this late stage.
Yeah.
Like they signed Nick Muse too, who's a younger tight end. They don't have a lot of depth at tight end because of the end. That's fine. That
right. And the Cameron Latu, I saw they signed him too.
Yeah, to a futures deal. But Muse is actually on the practice squad now, so they could technically elevate him if they wanted to. With Irving, you don't bring in 32-year-old guys unless there's this late in the season, unless there's a reason you need them. That to me is bigger than like if Cam showed up on the practice report yesterday as he did, I would have said, well, I wouldn't be too concerned. Manage him, but the added part of the Irving to the equation that set off a little bit of a red flag. It could be nothing, could be everything.
Interesting. We'll see how that plays out. John, everybody's waiting for the update on two key players, obviously, coming into this game. You got some information on them. Quinyon Mitchell, one cornerback, and QB, obviously, Jalen Hurts. He spoke yesterday. What'd you hear from Jalen? What's your feeling on how those two guys are progressing and what their status will be for this Sunday's game?
Well, Quinyon's playing, no doubt about it. He said he's playing. He said he's fine. Got hurt making a tackle for whatever reason. Couldn't go back in the game, but so he'll be ready to go. You do have to keep an eye on it, I suppose. And Isaiah Rodgers has done a nice job when he's been forced to play in the past. So I think he could persevere. But Quinyon's going to certainly start and play, and hopefully he's fine. With Jalen, there's no doubt he's going to play. All the concerns with Jalen Hurts are what Jalen Hurts is going to be out there. Is he going to be limited
Right.
to a significant degree, mobility wise? All I did, he was playing pool afterwards. I think can't help in the players' lounge, can't help to think that's purposeful because you don't see him do that a lot.
Right.
Playing pool with I think it was Darian Kennard and I forget the other person, but and the eyes were glued walking back and forth, walking to the auditorium, didn't notice any limp or weird gaits or anything like that. So with Jalen though, we're not going to know until game time how limited he is. But I think he's going to be somewhat limited. Now, is that 70% or 90%, which are numbers anyway? But, is he? I think it's going to make a big difference. And to be honest, I don't see a lot of avenues for Washington to win this game. Been pretty honest about. That's probably the one avenue if he's severely limited, which I think could keep, Washington in the game.
What's the nature? I mean, I know obviously it's a knee, but do you know anything more about the nature of the injury? And what I mean by that is, if it's a knee contusion, I think he'll play through it because there's no risk of aggravating a bigger injury, if that makes sense. If it's an MCL and he literally can't cut, he could really hurt himself more. Wouldn't that limit him severely more? I mean, I would assume that Jalen Hurts is going to take
MCL
meds he needs to take and go as hard as he can. But I think the nature of the injury would change how hard he could go.
Yeah, MCL is the big key. Meniscus too, and those would severely limit you versus contusion, which is more of a pain tolerance thing. And I don't think there's any doubt he can play through that. But if it's a sprain or a torn meniscus, I always bring up David Chow because he does a good job with the video stuff. He ruled out PCL, but he said it could be an MCL, could be even a torn meniscus. That could limit him to that degree to where he's not the same player and you're just trying to persevere through a game. But, and then obviously things would have to change a little bit. And I think even coming in, Washington's going to be hyper-focused like everybody is on stopping Saquon Barkley in this running game. It's easier said than done. Right. But they did it for a half in Washington when Jalen got hurt. I mean, he also had the long touchdown run with Kenny Pickett on the field. But once they settled down, they stopped him. Yeah. With no +1 in the running game for the most part.
They did run the ball well against, I guess it was Dallas. So yeah. We won 41-7. I don't know how much you can do.
I don't know how much. Yeah.
I mean, listen, it was 160, and I said, okay, at least you can, you can run. I mean, I know you have the offensive line and the running back still, but there's no doubt Jalen takes away some element of it. But I thought that was at least a small positive. But look, if you're going to average 90 net yards passing, John, 160 yards on the ground is not going to be enough. So whether, when push comes to shove, it seems like we're going to have to make a few more plays in the air this week in the passing game.
Yeah, I expect, 65 net yards passing. That's almost hard to do. I joke that's like junior varsity high school level. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
And some have pointed out, look, you had the drop by AJ, but I don't like doing that. It's like, well, if they didn't drop the ball, well, every team can do that.
Yeah, right. There's those plays in every game.
Yeah,
the numbers are the numbers. The facts are the facts.
And the Devontae penalty. All right, people get penalties all the time that limit completions. You can't just say, well, if
right.
It wasn't a hard hit, it's a completion. Yeah, I think that's nonsense. But I think it's almost hard to do that again if you're trying. even without Dallas Goedert. And hopefully Dallas is okay as well. I can't imagine they'd only be at 65 net passing yards again. I can't imagine it.
That's sad. I think they're going to be able to. I think they're going to be able to put it together a little bit more. But if Jalen's legs are not a factor, I mean, look, he had the 40+ yard touchdown last game, so he obviously still has that ability, or he did last game. If you lose that, we'll see what the game plan is coming in. John, any update on AJ Brown? You spoke with AJ Brown yesterday in the media. He's having not a great playoffs right now. 3 catches, 24 yards in 2 games. He was targeted 7 times, obviously only caught 2 last game. He had the 2 big drops that everybody's been talking about all week. Many speculated maybe he's dealing with an injury. They talked about it in the week prior to the game leading up to it. He said, I'm a little bit more banged up than everybody else, I believe was the words he used. What do you think about A.J. Brown? You think he's going to be dealing with that same injury coming into this, or is he a little bit healthier? What do you think?
Well, he says he's getting a little bit better. He wasn't happy with the snow. He's one of the guys who wasn't certainly happy with the snow, and he slipped on that pass that he typically is going to catch. And he noted, he's still getting open and big blocks down the field on the Saquon runs. So still contributing in that aspect. But yeah, I mean, when you have an all-pro level receiver, you want to get the ball in the hands of the all-pro level receiver. You're not 100%. He's not going to be 100%. We'll probably know after the season what he was dealing with. But clearly he's not himself. But he did say he's getting incrementally better. Might be a situation where injuries are an interesting thing because, I think way too many people assume, all right, he's on the field, he's the same guy. And that's just not the case, especially this time of year. And that's what we're talking about with Jalen Hurts. That's what we're going to be talking about with AJ and have been talking about and so many other players. I mean, we always talk about look at Washington. Every week you say, fans get concerned. Well, look at Washington's injury report. Sam Cosmi's out for the year. Their best offensive lineman tore his ACL. Deron Payne didn't practice. Has got it dealing with a knee, dealing with a finger. Bobby Wagner didn't practice, dealing with an ankle. Zach Ertz didn't practice, dealing with a rib. Cleveland Farrell didn't practice, dealing with a knee. I expect them all to play.
Yeah, right.
Everybody, this is pro football. This is the 20th game for the Eagles. That's a grind from a physical standpoint.
Yeah, it is, man. No doubt.
So, just because somebody's out there doesn't mean they're not playing through stuff. And, it works on obviously both teams. The first time people talk about, and I've forgotten it myself because as you go through the season, Jaden Daniels probably had his worst game, at least since the opener, where he didn't play well in Tampa, against Tampa. It was probably his worst game. He had a rib injury, and there was concern that, he wouldn't be able to go that week.
Right.
And I don't know how much it affected him, but saw Kenny Pickett try to play through a rib injury. Injuries are a real thing, even when guys are out there.
Right. We'll see how it plays out. You mentioned that Commander's injury report. I was going to say, I think they're more healthy than we are, but they did have a lot of guys not practice yesterday, so they're pretty banged up over there. I will say this, the one interesting matchup, there's a couple interesting matchups, and we're going to get into all of them. We have a great show planned for everybody, by the way. I want to welcome everybody in. Sorry I didn't do that this morning. Good to see everybody here in the chat. Don't forget to hit that like button if you're watching live, and if you're not watching live or you're watching after, or you're listening to the podcast, we appreciate you for listening, tuning in. Don't forget to hit that like button for us. Subscribe to the channel and leave us your comments down below. I try and read all the comments when I can. So good morning, everybody. Hit that like button. Hope you guys are doing well this morning. 3 days away from the NFC title game in Philly. Here we go, everybody. John, Marcus Lattimore, or Marshawn Lattimore, excuse me,
I
played
always
his
call him
best
Marcus
game.
too. That's weird.
Yeah, where is it? Did I get that from you? Is that where I got that from?
Probably because I
Yeah, you
always,
called him Marcus earlier, and I
for some
corrected you.
reason, I feel, and Marshawn's been playing for a very long time. He's a very good player. He's been an All-Pro corner.
That's
For
funny.
some reason, I believe his name should be Marcus because I
Yeah,
always
well,
make
it's
that.
funny because you and Cilio both say Marcus, and now I'm saying Marcus.
Yeah, it's
I was the one
weird.
correcting you two.
I
Now
think
I'm
there was
saying
a,
it.
yeah. It's
Well,
weird.
anyway, he had his best game. Well, he had a really good game in their playoff game last week versus the Detroit Lions. He was giving them hell. Look, if AJ's a little banged up, that's an interesting matchup coming into that game. Like we say, I always like AJ in any matchup, but an AJ on a banged up knee could be a different story going up against a cornerback like Marshawn Lattimore. And if they have to throw the ball, I think that could be a significant matchup in this game. There's a couple good matchups in this game that I want to talk to you about today.
Yeah, I mean, those two guys love each other too. They have tremendous respect. I remember, the game down there when the Commanders won, even, AJ got, well, I don't know, was it 3 PIs on him? A whole bunch, almost fouled him out of the game, from a perspective of just grab. Marshawn was having a real difficult time with AJ.
Yeah, they had those double pass interference calls, which were kind. I mean, I'll take them, but they were.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. But those two have tremendous respect for each other, and AJ didn't want to talk about it yesterday, but he'll talk about it after the game because he loves playing against Marshawn Lattimore and vice versa, just from a competitive nature.
Yeah.
But the Eagles always like, as you mentioned, the advantage, A.J. Brown pretty much against anybody. But again, he's not 100%, so it changes things a little bit.
We'll see how it all plays out. We got a great guest coming up, John Stolness. All right, we're going to talk to Johnny Stolness coming up here on Birds 365 after the break. Again, thanks everybody for being here. We'll get to that first commercial break now, and John, it will come up here at 8:20. So we're going to get him now on Birds 365. Let me tell you guys about the great people at BetUS. All right, you can see the promo code I put on your screen. That's YouTube 150. Gives you 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, and you get 125% on your second and third deposit, all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. Well, John Stolness from Bleeding Green Nation coming up next on Birds 365.